Okay, hi everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. Hope you're well wherever you are in the world right now. If you're in England, you're halfway through. You're over halfway through your lockdown, so not long to go. If you're in the US, welcome. Anywhere else, hi. Do pop in the comment section where you're joining us from. We love to see it. So hi Cressida. So please do pop in where you're watching from. My name is Hannah and I'm the UK casting specialist at Backstage. I'm also a casting director and worked in casting for the last 10 years. I am joined today by AMPLIFY and Henry of AMPLIFY. Wave, wave, wave. We're partnering with AMPLIFY on this event to bring a really nice overview of casting from two really amazing up-and-coming casting directors that I'm super excited about. So we'll be speaking to them about their experiences and different takes on the industry. If you have any questions as we go along, please do pop them in the Q&A box, and Henry will be sending those over to us or asking them with his face, with his so off to a great start. So hi, thanks for joining us, and I'm going to hand you over to Henry before I say anything else weird.
Thank you, Hannah, and hello everybody. So yeah, my name is Henry and I'm an actor, but tonight I'm here as a producer of AMPLIFY Film Festival. Now AMPLIFY is a partnership between Film Bath, Cambridge Film Festival, Sydney City Brighton and Cornwall Film Festival, 4 British film festivals distilled into one. Now it is blasting new cinema into your front room with AMPLIFY's online festival running from November the 6th to the 22nd. And it's beaming feature films, shorts and industry events directly to you, wherever you are in the UK. And I'll come on to that part in a moment. It is supported by the BFI and National Lottery. And there's a wide range of features, documentaries and short films and Q&As, all at the click of a button. Now, I'll put the full program in the chat in a moment, but if you use the code LOVECORNWALL, capital L, capital C, you'll be able to save an extra 10% when it comes to watching films. And there's some great titles still out there. Now, I need to mention for our international viewers that a lot of the content is geo-blocked by the distributor. So this means that some features may not be available to view where you are. However, there are a wide range of free short films that you should be able to watch and a large number of Q&As from the films that are going to be available either on the platform or on our YouTube channels. So feel free to ask any questions about that as well, I guess, as we go through. But yeah, send us your questions for the panel, and that's it from me. Thank you, Hannah.
Thank you. Oh, I've never co-hosted with anyone before, so this is really nice. Backstage are partnering with AMPLIFY on this event and a couple of other things as part of the work that we're doing in the UK. And actually, I will really recommend AMPLIFY. All of these digital festivals have been amazing because I've been able to watch so many more films than I would usually get to do when you're running around a film festival and looking at all the strands. You always miss stuff, so check them out. Definitely, there's loads of stuff going on at the moment. But yeah, back to today, we are talking about casting, and we are joined by two really exciting casting directors, Jessica Straker and Sophie Kingston Smith. They join us. Jessica has worked as a casting associate on Rocks. If you guys haven't seen Rocks yet, I think I mention it on every panel that I do because I'm obsessed with it. I'm still obsessed with it, Jessica. And we did speak with Jessica a little while ago about her work on that. She's also casting assistant on Small Axe, which I'm sure a lot of you have seen over the last week. Incredible work. And she's also casting assistant on Shag Bands, which I caught at LFF last month. Or maybe it was the month before. I don't know, I'm in a time warp. Sophie Kingston Smith has worked in casting for many years. She worked at Chichester Festival Theatre, sorry, try and say that with a speech impediment, it's not going to work for you. She's also worked with casting directors Carmel Cochran, Lucinda Sison, and Tom Adams, working across commercials, TV, film, and she's now working as casting associate with Rose Wicksteed. She is co-casting 2 projects with Rose at the moment for original Apple series and a few other things. And she's also working as casting director on short films, and her work is crazy good. So thanks so much for joining us, Jessica and Sophie. I'm so happy to have you with us today.
What a nice welcome, Hannah. Thank you.
Thanks. Okay, so let's start with you, Sophie. What interested you about casting? How did you first get drawn into it as a career choice?
Well, I didn't really know it was a career per se. I just knew that when I was growing up, my mum has really good taste in, particularly in like kind of like British like homegrown drama and stuff. And I grew up watching a lot of stuff that she would put me onto, and I was quite lucky because she'd take me to theatre trips and stuff. And school, we had a couple of trips to theatre, but I didn't really know it was a career as such until I was in my 20s, and it didn't really seem like a very attainable career for someone with no connections and not really any didn't have a desire to be an actor. I didn't have any kind of way into the industry, as it were. So I kind of leapt around a bit. I did a bit of agency work. I worked in video production, and then I ended up working at an extras agency, which is where I met your lovely self. Yeah, and it wasn't until I was kind of a bit later in my 20s that I finally got a job in featured casting, which was the Chichester job that you mentioned. But it took a long time to get there because it was just a very indirect route. But I didn't realise that a lot of people, all it is they just write to the casting director and let them know that they're available and keen to learn. And for some people, that's all it takes. I just didn't know that was an option.
Yeah. And what about you? What about you, Jessica? What drew you in to start?
I sort of stumbled into it. I think that seems to be the way for most people in casting. I had met who then became the associate director on Rocks, Anu Enriquez, at like an event, and we just got along, and I didn't know what her job was, and then just sort of came forward for a bit of extra work, and met Lucy Pardy, who was the casting director on Rocks, and it just a few days admin just turned into a whole career switch. But it was that similar thing of it sort of merged all my talents and all my skills together, that I'd sort of jumped around as I'd been moving through life, and in a really strange way. So it was just like, once I got there, I was like, this just utilizes everything, which is quite.
What do you think it is that, like, what are those skills that you need if you want to really think about a job in casting? What do you think it helps to have as like a basis of the way that you work?
I think talking to people. You need to be affable. You need to sort of be able to talk to people on their level, especially with sort of street casting, where you're interacting with people who haven't acted before or aren't as used to like the tropes of the industry. So being able to sort of translate, I think that's probably one of the biggest ones. I think also just I was in advertising, so a lot of like social media, a lot of marketing, I was also a PA, so and especially as an assistant and as an associate, like doing a lot of PA work, it's transferable onto sort of working with the casting director, but also then working on budgets and stuff as well. It's very transferable in that way. And just working with kids. My mum had a dance school, so I was sort of always around that energy of like how to nourish and nurture talent in a different field. But I think sort of observing that as well was helpful.
Yeah. What about you, Sophie? Did it click for you, like when you decided that you wanted to work in casting, especially when you started working on principal roles? Did it just click for you straight away?
Yeah, well, I think it's a personality thing, because like I think it's a combination of experience of like Jessica said, I think if you have experience assisting in any kind of a role, then you're essentially like preempting somebody else's needs and looking out for what they really need, and that really helps with training in any kind of casting assistant role, because you almost have to be able to anticipate their needs before they've even asked you. But I think it's also, in order to get the job in the first place, you do need to have a demonstrable sense of keenness for the industry, and show some kind of knowledge that you haven't necessarily got from working in the job, but that you have from your personal interest in actors and shows and things like that. Because although having said that, a lot of casting directors, some if it's, you know, some might not really care about your thoughts and ideas initially. They might just want somebody who's like a really hot assistant, but then as you grow, you get more of a creative voice as that comes a bit later. But that's really not applicable for, that's only kind of a small amount of casting directors, I'd say. But yeah, I think it's about being really flexible. A lot of the time you have to, I think a single-mindedness doesn't really work for you in casting, because you have to be adaptable with the fact that things will change overnight. Someone that could be the director's first choice one day suddenly is off the table again, and you can't get too stuck down one route of thought, because you have to be really patient with all the changes that you go through and all the avenues that you explore, that suddenly you just have to drop sometimes. And I don't think everybody has a personality to suit that particular line of work, because and that's no good thing or bad thing. It's just, I think it is only, you know, I don't think it's something that necessarily everybody could do for that reason.
Yeah, I get it, totally. So you've both worked as assistants, associates, and casting directors. Are there any like real tangible differences between what the role entails for both roles? Maybe if we go to Jessica first.
I guess, yeah, it really depends per project, really, truly, because you can have big projects where there's like maybe two assistants on there, and an associate and a casting director, or you could be working really closely, and then or you could be co-casting in that sense as well. So there's so many different ways it can show. But what I'd probably say, which probably sounds a bit ethereal, but like at casting direction level, you need a bit more headspace just to see the bigger picture and think on that way. And whereas assistants sort of, yeah, as Sophie said, was sort of anticipating and like getting all of that stuff moving and writing a list and making sure all of that's clear, just so the casting director can oversee and really think about the bigger picture of like where everything is slotting in. Would you agree, Sophie?
I would, yeah, and I think that's a really good way of putting it, because particularly under my time working with Rose, I started at an assistant level, and yeah, it was very much just kind of, I've been fortunate enough to kind of progress, you know, through her company, and now to the point where I'm co-casting with her. And now that I'm able to kind of utilize the assistants to help me with stuff, I'm able to see how much more kind of time I have to think about the creative and the jigsaw of it all, when I've got somebody else doing the uploading or the lists or the availability checking. And not that that is beneath anybody, we should all be, you know, doing that, and that's just something that, you know, even casting directors do. But it's nice to be able to not have to worry about all of the intricacies of that, and just get the, you know, just have the information ready so you can think of the bigger picture. But yeah, and I think it's nice when a casting director doesn't forget what they've been through to get to where they are as well, because sometimes I think, you know, I've worked for a couple of casting directors where I think they don't really appreciate how much time and effort goes into getting all of this ready for them to then pass on, and allowing you the space as an assistant to do that. But it can be a lot of hard work at any level of casting. I think it's just in a different way.
Yeah. Cool. So that's a little bit of a background behind how maybe a casting office works, but because we've got this filmmaker audience through Amplify today, and we'll also have the filmmaker audience through Backstage, but we're probably speaking to a few more filmmakers than we would usually. If these guys who are watching are looking for a casting director, how can a filmmaker who hasn't worked with a CD before start to begin the process to even bring one on board? Where is a good place for them to, or how do they do that?
For me, I'd say start, if you're a filmmaker, I'd assume maybe you've written it yourself. Look at what films inspired you, look at the credits, see who cast in that style, go through agents if they're represented, and sort of just put the feelers out in that way. But yeah, I don't think you should be scared of it in that sense. But yeah, I think the best way to sort of find your point is just to see who has cast stuff in a similar tone, and then spread out beyond that. If you're looking, I don't know, if you're going, you can aim high, because you never know if people have space and time, especially if it's a short film or something. They might have a few weeks for you that can work. But yeah, aim high, but also then look at other people who are sort of working around them or in that way. So, and plus I think like the casting directors network is very tight knit, and if I can't do something, I might forward it on to someone else and say, oh, do you want this? Or yeah, that's happened many times. So yeah, just reach out.
And so what kind of stuff do you like to see if a director's or a producer's approaching you? What do you like to be shared with you initially? How should that approach look?
Well, I think you should always have sight of the script, obviously, and then a treatment as well. I think a treatment is really helpful just to kind of get a sense of the tone and the image, and also it helps you kind of get a sense of their expectations as well. It's always, I think sometimes it can be a bit intimidating when you're approached with a short that has absolutely no budget and the references are like Brad Pitt, or you know what I mean, not that that's ever happened per se, but you know, someone that you feel you would never get for this. I think it's helpful to know that early on, because then you can kind of decide, do I really want to take on a project when I probably can't deliver as bigger expectations as I have for the budget and considering the time scale that you've got. So I think if you have casting references in your treatment, that's really helpful. I think it's good to know kind of what the inspiration behind the project is, because I think when actors, or I'm talking really more about short films, but when actors are being asked to work for you know, minimal or equity minimum or anything, I think to have some kind of a personal reason behind it, or to have some kind of not so much an agenda, but you know, some kind of a background, a personal connection to it, I think really helps in terms of securing the art, you know, the artists as well. And yeah, and I guess it just makes it easier as a casting director to pitch it and to talk about it and to bring people in and get them excited if you feel excited about it as well. So yeah, yeah. And I think obviously, I think both sides should be open to negotiation a little bit on the budget. And I think the thing that can be quite frustrating is when there's no budget allocated for casting, but then often there's budget allocated for other heads of department, and you think, well, you know, maybe you should be open to, you know, these conversations as well and be malleable. Yeah, I realise you didn't ask me that, but
no, but that's totally relevant, and I'm glad that you said that.
I would jump in and just say, in terms of like how to approach a bit of, I don't know where I got this advice from. It was some talk way back when, but this, I think it was a businesswoman, was saying, when you email someone, don't just say, oh, hi, I'd love to speak to you about this, like email me back. Give them information so they know that they can make an informed choice. Because you don't know, if I just send, I don't know, Martin Scorsese an email that says, hi, please email me back, love your work. He doesn't know if I'm going to drag him into like a 10-year like filmic relationship, or if I just want like I just want him to like send a tweet or something. Like, he doesn't know. So give as much information at the start and let people make an informed choice, because you don't know how busy people are, and yeah, when people don't have that connection with you, so that goes across the board. So if you're approaching anyone, not just casting directors, but yeah, always,
yeah, that's a really good point.
Yeah, and leave at least one question, I think, as well, just like, I would like to know this. So because I think, yeah, busy people will be able to help you with something specific more so than something like ethereal in that way. Keep using the word ethereal, sorry.
Yeah, definitely.
Relevant. It's totally true.
Mm.
Yeah. I did see, by the way, somebody just asked the question if this talk was for actors. It's for actors and filmmakers, so we will definitely get onto the actors' questions. Don't you worry.
The questions are coming in for all the actors, so we've got those for shortly as well.
Have you got any filmmaker questions yet for us, Henry?
Not at the moment. I think I can just echo what everyone said so far, particularly when sending emails. So during lockdown, I ended up doing loads of industry interviews with directors, casting directors, military advisors, lots of people, and just sending the emails out basically cold to people, but having to put information saying what we wanted and asking the questions of, it'd be great to speak to you. And that was to agents and directly to them. But by having a conversation, it's about making that connection.
Yeah.
But you need to make sure there's information supplied. It's definitely an important thing. Don't just go, I've got a project. Doesn't work.
Yeah, definitely. Be specific, concise. I do a lot of work with Backstage where we've been in the UK for the last 4 years, and it's been wonderful how quickly it's grown. But obviously right at the beginning there, I did have to let people know that they could use Backstage, and that's ongoing. But I've learned a lot about that type of stuff. And this stuff is relevant as well, by the way, guys, for actors, because if you think about how many emails casting directors get from actors every day, week, whatever, it's difficult to go through them all anyway, but there are things that you can do, and that is keeping it concise. You're probably not going to ask a question unless you're asking them if they want to attend your show, but just make sure that you've got the information in there that they need in order to be able to consider you either for a specific project, or if you've got something that you want them to see or something like that, just make sure that you're being super clear in that email. I wanted to just break down the complexities of some of the balances. Sophie, you touched on it already, but the balances that you have to make everybody happy in the situation where when you're a casting director, to keep producers happy, to keep the agents happy, that they're getting the best terms for their actors, to keep the actor happy, that they're having the right amount of input, or that they're being seen in the right way, or whatever it is. So yeah, how do you, there's a question in there somewhere, but yeah, I don't know what it is. So maybe Jessica, if you could just talk about, like, for instance, the project that you're working on at the moment, what do you have to take into consideration to balance all of those things, just to give people a bit of insight into how much work goes into the job?
I guess it really depends on sort of relationships. So I'm very blessed that I'm working with some really lovely producers that are just on the same page in terms of just brevity and like jokes and stuff as well, which can make things much easier in that sense. And it's, I guess from experience, I think it's just making sure you've asked for enough as in your budget. Line producers will try and like lowball, will try and cut corners and make spaces for things, but they're usually, if you can justify very quickly on and like sort of say, okay, I know you don't want to hear this, but if you want to cast everyone, or if you have to sort of show them what problems might be in the future and really justify why you need a bit more money. And usually people come back and move things around, and you can make things work in that sense. In terms of our job as casting, we want the best for our actors as well. So it's not in our intention to lowball anyone. It will be trying to get people the best sort of rates. There might be, in terms of the type of project, there might be tier systems in terms of like who's getting paid what, and that will be dependent on a variety of things, such as like if it's a lead role or a supporting role, or like the amount of time they're in the script. It could be in terms of their sort of legacy, like if you've got an older actor or a more well-known actor who has done a lot, their engagement fee is going to be a lot higher. But we also try and make sure that yeah, everyone gets paid what they should do in that sense. So with agents, an agent should be fighting for you. So I don't know, I think we expect to have that pushback. If it's not there, then I'd be a bit like, okay. Obviously you don't want people being like all the time, but and that's hopefully because you're offering them something fair. But yeah, I think it's just a conversation with like multiple different people. No different from anywhere else, really. Sophie?
No, I'm really glad that you said that about agents kind of fighting that corner with you, because ultimately, yes, we work for the production, but we want the artists to get paid fairly. And production, you know, they're running a business. So you do kind of have to keep the production company happy by making, you know, financially viable deals, but you do kind of expect that the agent will, you know, fight for their client as well. But yeah, it is a bit of a battle with one things of the shows that I'm working on at the moment is a creative battle. I mean, a battle between the creatives wanting a particular thing and then production kind of saying there's not the budget for it. And as the casting team, you're kind of in the middle because you want to deliver on the creative side, but we work for production, we work for the studio. We're trying to be respectful of their budget and mindful of their budget. And one of the trends I've noticed from most projects as well is that you start a project where generally, sometimes at the beginning, and this is a bit of a generalization, but sometimes at the beginning, fees are reasonable. Like, you know, there seems to be quite a lot of movement within the budget, and then inevitably on any show, the costs begin to ramp up. You know, budgets start to run over, and then it starts to get a bit squeezed towards the end. So you kind of have to really kind of keep on reminding people what they were paid in the beginning and what you know, what the standards were that were set already, and trying to work within those terms as well. But I mean, ultimately, you're trying to do the best job that you can do by delivering on the creative, but also keeping in mind what you're being told from the studio and their budgets. And particularly after a year that we've had with all the productions shutting down and going into hiatus and all the money they've lost. And yeah, it's putting out fires everywhere. But yeah, I mean, we're only one small part of the production as well. So you have to remember that as much of the fight that you're doing, whoever is on the other side of it, they're putting out fires everywhere, and you're just one part of it. Everyone's got budget demands. Everyone's trying to, you know, hustle them for something. So you have to concede at some point.
I think everything that you've just mentioned there is really good from both sides. If any actors are watching, or any filmmakers are watching, just to show the sheer magnitude of all of those plates that you need to be spinning at once. And that's without even mentioning the amount of show reels and submissions you have to go through, and you know, this person being in some sort of negotiation at any stage, and then it might be changing and all those things. So, you know, if you do submit for something you don't hear back, or you do send an email to a casting director and you don't hear back, or your casting director's taken a little bit of a longer time on one of your roles than you expected, just bear in mind that it is like plates spinning. And then also you've got the business side of things where you're thinking about the next project to come through, and then this is going on in the periphery which might pick up at any time. So there's loads of stuff going on, and it is fun but crazy. So let's switch up a little bit and move on to when we actually are doing the job that we like to do, that part of the job that we like to do, which is when we're auditioning actors and testing people out for roles. So I know, Jessica, you've worked on some amazing projects where you've got actors who've not had too much experience, or they're brand new, in fact. So could you talk us through just some of the things that you might do to make someone feel comfortable and workshop a scene to make the most out of an actor?
I'd do the same for, like, even if they were a more established actor or gone through drama school. But I think it's just making them comfortable in the room or on the Zoom as it is now. Yeah, just that, we call it a chat. You have like a chat section before you get started, usually in an audition, which is very much part of the audition in that sense. You just want to see their vibe, you want to make sure they're comfortable, and then you get into it. And just about, as I said earlier, about one of the skills that I found has been really helpful is being able to talk to lots of different people. And I remember I used to work in as a cashier, and I remember thinking, oh look, I'll do this because yeah, I'll be able to talk to loads of different people, and it's really helped in this sense of if someone's not hitting it, especially if they're a non-actor, just sort of pulling analogies from the world and just being like, I don't know, I had one boy who was really, he was in like a community drama group, so he had a bit of training and he was going so cool with it, and I was like, you're being too London cool, like think about when, sorry to anyone who's outside of London, but think about if you're from, like, I've got family in Oxford, or if you're in Cornwall, or like how the coolness of London or the coolness of like the bigger cities like Manchester or Birmingham drips down into the towns, and then you've got like people using maybe slightly outdated slang in that, like, so, and I was just like, just do it like that, and then he got it, and it was just just being able to talk to people on their level in that way, and in a way that doesn't make them feel defensive. Yeah, just telling them no, that wasn't great doesn't always help. So yeah, just yeah, I like long-winded words and sentences, as you can see, so I find that helps.
Yeah.
Do you find that you can adapt, because you're like quite wordy, like I'm quite wordy, but do you adapt with kids? Because I find sometimes my vocabulary goes a bit over their heads and I have to like tame it right down.
Yeah, I think that's also in terms of like yeah, you have, when speaking their language and just bringing things down, not using like words that maybe the industry would get very instantly. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, but I think, yeah, being wordy seems to be across the board in casting. We're very wordy.
Yeah.
Was the ability to articulate yourself and your thoughts behind why you like something, which is something that I've definitely had to learn. Like, I really struggled, I'm getting better, to say why I think something is good. So I think casting directors have really good ability to do that, and anybody that I've worked with or even spoken to have what you've both said there, are able to just use their words to actually explain why something is good, or explain why you need to change something, or explain how to change something. Yeah, was there anything that you would add in that, Soph?
Yeah, well, I mean, I agree with Jessica. I think making people feel comfortable is key. That's absolutely the most important thing. And at the setup of the studio I used to work at, we had a really good opportunity to, the walk from reception where I'd pick them up to the room was about a minute and a half. So in that time, I had a good minute and a half at least of just like talking to them on my level, getting them a glass of water because it was right next to the kitchen, and instantly just letting them know that I'm a person as well, and they don't feel too intimidated. And sometimes it can be quite daunting when you step into a room and there's a camera pointed at you, and you know you're I think giving someone that space to just kind of relax, especially if they're nervous, before you start rolling is really essential. I've only met a very few people who have stayed in character from the minute you pick them up to the room, but some people do if it's a particular accent, but otherwise they just want to be themselves until that moment and just be reassured that themselves is fine. But yeah, I mean, I think another thing that we, I suppose, like to do is give them enough, schedule enough time that we don't feel that, it's not a commercial, like one or two things and they're out. Like we try to schedule as much time as we feasibly can in that day, so that they can play around with the scene. And if there's anything that we can give them ahead of the audition to prepare so that they have as much time as possible in the room for taping, we'll try and give those notes to the agent ahead as well, so that they've got time to mull it over and try a few different things.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it's just creating a vibe and being understanding and being patient, really.
Yeah.
But then you're also up against the time pressure of, you've got so every many auditions in a day, and you have to kind of not let them run away with it as well.
Yeah. Cool. So I think maybe now we're speaking about actors in the room, do we have any questions, Henry, that you'd like to?
Got lots of questions now. Just trying to see the best, pick the ones. so I guess we've got quite an international audience here, and you said you mostly cast, I guess, I don't know if you guys all cast in the UK or across the world, but do you ever look to cast internationally for UK-based projects?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think, I mean, it is project dependent on, I guess it depends on the brief. Like if it was a very, you know, UK specific project, then possibly, you know, we would not consider lots of international artists, but it's such a diverse, you know, Europe is so diverse. I'm just RIP to our to our involvement in this, but there's talent in all corners of the earth that are applicable for your shows if you just know how to look for it. And I think we utilize, as well as Spotlight, we have a good relationship with lots of agents that we send briefs to directly, or then we put it out on eTalenta is really helpful for sourcing in Europe. Breakdown services if we can afford to bring people in from the US as well. But yeah, I'd say our main casting resource was Spotlight, but yeah, we absolutely are open to, I'm not even sure if that was the question, bringing people in from other countries. Yeah, then yes. But yeah, it depends on the project though, if they can afford to.
So with now we're talking about locations. I know, Jessica, you're casting something at the moment which is regional up in Leeds. So do you, obviously specific to this project, that one is casting in Leeds anyway. How does that process differ from something like Rocks where you are looking in London? Is it more difficult? Is there different ways of doing things when you're working regionally?
I don't think completely. I guess maybe because I'm not a Leeds native, there's that. And when I was in London, I know sort of with Rocks, we were sort of casting in and around North and East London, which is sort of my area where I grew up. So there's a bit, maybe it's just things like knowing just the context of an area that you're entering, knowing the community who's there, just having that little bit of that just extra moment of like, okay, I can just slide into here and I know how to sort of navigate you. That's not there with being up north, but the producers are from up there as well. One of the writers is as well, so it's a very nice sort of cast. It's nice to work with people who are in that community and sort of bringing them in and not just jumping in and like taking away opportunities up there. But yeah, and there's so many transferable things from just being a Brit as well, that you can sort of, after a while, once someone points you in the direction and just taps you and says, oh, that area it's like Hackney, or this area, that then you're off on it, on things. So I don't think there's too much of a difference in that way if you don't make it. But yeah, I guess everyone's in London, as they say, in terms of the industry. So that could maybe probably be a hindrance, but I haven't come into that yet. But I think that's more so because I'm working with non-actors on that project. But I do know, yeah, it is nice to sort of wherever the places, the shoot location is, it's always nice to sort of maybe do a little breakdown and see what sort of talent is around, be that in Europe, be that in North America, be that wherever it's shooting, Africa or even Australia at times. I've had projects I've sort of around that I've seen. Yeah, you just sort of engage with maybe a local casting director. Well, but yeah, we always will, yeah, be open to who's about, and try and give them an opportunity. If something's filming in your area, you want to be part of it if you're an actor. So yeah, we're always open.
Yeah. And for you, Sophie, with everything that's going on right now, I feel like there has been a bit of a mass exodus from London. I don't know, well, probably not to that extreme, but people are leaving London to go and stay maybe where they were brought up and things like that, like actors or other professionals are not seeing the need perhaps to base themselves full-time in London. With everything that's going on with COVID, do you feel like the positives of us being able to do things digitally initially, do you think that's going to continue afterwards?
I do think so. I think that the knock-on effects of this will last for a long time, and I do think that people are going to work in very different ways now. And yeah, I mean, I personally enjoy meeting people in the room, and I'm looking forward to a time when I can get back to in-person auditions. However, I think if this year has shown us anything, is that we can all work in a completely different way and still be as efficient as we were before. I think especially technology will allow us to do that. But I think there can be, the self-tape process can be less efficient in the way that they tape it, you want to see something different, you send it back, they tape it again. You know, in an in-person audition, you can address all of the things that you want to see live. But you know, I guess if we get to a point where we can do, I mean, we can do auditions live anyway, like we are now. But yeah, but I think there's something about meeting in person and that rapport and that emotional connection, particularly if it's a scene that isn't straightforward, if it's a scene that does mean that you're going to be, you know, pouring your heart out, then I wouldn't rule out. I wouldn't say it's going to make, you know, 100% of a change, but I do think that the message should be to people that don't live in London: you absolutely are able to be considered, and you absolutely can be part of this acting world, and technology will lend itself to that. I mean, we've been casting people from like Iceland and from, you know, before COVID. I mean, like I said, we were casting from all over Europe, and we've managed to meet some amazing actors that way. So yeah. Maybe, and I suppose it's maybe there are few opportunities to network and stuff, but if everything's going to be on digital now, then it's only going to open up even more for those non-London based people.
Yeah, and this is totally relevant because obviously we're partnering with AMPLIFY, and that is, remind me, Henry, of which film festivals it is combining.
So it's Cornwall Film Festival, Bath Film Festival, Cine City Brighton, and Cambridge Film Festival. So it's not spread out across the UK. And I think to add to what you've been saying about the idea that Equity, the Actors Union in the UK, have a Cast Local campaign about trying to use local talent, not only for productions filming in the areas, but also to help with environmental impact and spreading out things from outside the main city hubs.
Yeah.
Can I just say, these were two of the best segues I've ever seen. That was brilliant.
I honestly, minute to minute, I can't remember what just happened the minute before. So I'll watch it back.
It's genius.
Henry is smooth. Henry is really smooth.
Yeah, I do have a question that I need to answer myself here. Which is the most exciting part of Amplify? And the obvious answer is my interview with Hannah last Friday, which you can go check out on our Facebook page. But obviously, it's all the titles. There's over 50 titles. Unfortunately, you've missed Viggo Mortensen's directorial debut and UK premiere, The Falling. But there's loads of other great content that you should go watch if you've got time. It's on until Sunday, so yeah, go check that out, especially those who've joined later. Yeah, and talking about networking and there not being maybe as much of a hub for doing that, film festivals regionally are an amazing place to do that. It's where everybody can come and meet up and get to know each other, and they always put on events and things like that. But there are things going on online right now like this. So if anybody is a filmmaker and they want to network, just drop your social media or something in the comment section. People do that all the time. I think it's great if you want to connect with people to pop it in. So Henry, should we have some questions? Yeah, we've got quite a few questions. And there's quite a common theme to some of them. It's about how actors, or suppose all creatives, can get in touch with you. Are you happy with cold calling? Do you ignore that? How social media? Is there a way to get in contact with you?
Jessica's shaking her head.
Don't cold call people. I think yeah. I know how it feels wanting to sort of penetrate and get in there, but you have to respect people's boundaries. You go through agents if you can. There's nothing wrong with sending an actor sort of CV sort of covering email. There's nothing wrong with that. I think that's just a standard, just to say hi and like how things. Don't try and find my personal email. I will not will not respond. Don't try and like DM me on Instagram. Not I barely use Instagram, so don't do it. Like just respect. Think about, like, close your eyes and think about when you've got to where you really want to be, what parts will you want to keep sacred to yourself and uphold that to others, I'd say. Yeah.
And what about you, Sophie? Would you, like, maybe cold calling, like phone call, definitely like not the way forward. But what about emails? Do you accept email? Random emails?
Oh yeah, I mean, I accept emails. It's just I think it's one thing to accept an email, and it's another to expect a response. I think I do sometimes reply, and I do, especially if I've done a workshop. So I do quite a few workshops, and the actors will email me afterwards and just keep in touch, and I'll engage and stuff where possible. But I think if it's a cold call email, like somebody I've never met before that's found my email from the CDG or some project, then I'll happily open it and look at it. But I think if you then follow up asking why I haven't replied, I think that starts to cross the line a little bit. But there's absolutely no harm in dropping an email. I don't think it's professional to try and reach you on the phone if you don't have a specific reason. And yeah, I wouldn't accept anyone turning up at my house.
Oh gosh.
I think to a whole nother level there.
I know.
Yeah, I agree on, I think sending an email that just says, hey, this is me, consider me, this is what I've been doing, these are the projects that you've worked on that I like or I would like to work with in future, that's fine. But don't expect responses in that sense, because just on our side, we don't want to create a false sense of intimacy with people that we don't know. Like, me responding to you might make you think, oh my god, yeah. And it's like, I work predominantly in street casting. With a lot of my projects are finding people who have never acted before or think so. And yes, some of those shows have traditional actors roles around them, but I get a lot of people coming towards me, and I might not be able to help you for like maybe another 5 years, but like if you send me a strong email, I will remember it and I'll go through, because I've got an elephant's memory. But I don't want to email back saying thanks, I'm glad you enjoyed like that, and then make you feel like we've got a connection, and then I ignore you in your mind for 5 years because I'm just not working on anything that I'm working on like 16 to 18-year-old roles for like 5 years straight. So I think it will get read, and so I think take that on board. It will get read, and even when I think that's a good sign for boundaries as well. So even if you found someone's address, if you found Sophie's address, don't send a letter there, because even though you haven't got response, it will get read and you'll get remembered for the wrong thing, and maybe you'll never be seen because you come across as unhinged. So there you
Thanks
go.
for having my back there.
I'm going to come to your house. Somebody's asked here, as a producer, do I leave all costing for actors and extras with you casting directors? So, talk about budget. If a producer's wondering how to manage that, do you manage that, or did they, like, how does it work?
Was that to me, sorry, to Jessica?
Oh, yes, to you.
So from a production point of view, they want to know who is in charge of arranging the fee, like who decides on the fee. Right. Usually that's kind of collaborative. Well, sometimes a production will tell you what their budget is and then specifically what the actor should get paid. Otherwise, it can be a three-way conversation between the casting department, the studio and the production company, because it's the studio that hold the money, the production company that have eyes on the budget, and then the casting team who have knowledge of what the actor should get paid, or the expectation of the agent for the actor's fee is. So yeah, project dependent, but I'd say it's usually a three-way conversation between production studio and the casting team.
Great. Any actor questions for us, Henry?
Yeah, we got a really interesting one here actually, about sort of body type and physicality. Mostly relating to, do you find that less plus size actors get cast? So I guess Jessica,
I can jump in. I think, yeah, there isn't enough. I think it starts with writing. A lot of things are written, and this is in terms of like even just like able-bodied in that sense. There's a specific norm that a lot of writers write towards, just in terms of an unconscious bias there, and it makes it hard for it can make it hard to cast. And what I've seen is then you might you'd fall into tropes where then maybe secondary characters, you're like, oh yeah, we could go for a different shape there, we could go for a different race there, we could go maybe a different neurodivergency there, or whatever the case may be, and then that creates typecasting and like in terms of stereotypes and stuff. So yeah, I think it needs to change with writers. I would query it and like just say, can we, as casting, we will put forward different types of people, but yeah, you have to sort of watch your eye and make sure that, especially if it's not just your eye, if you've got loads of other people like producers and stuff who all have their say, you have to really check people and be like, is there a reason why this person weighs this much? Why are you dismissing this person? Yeah, I think it's just constant conversation. Sometimes, yeah, you have to point things out and hope that people don't get defensive about it and actually sit back and say, why have I done that? Because like that will happen to me as well. Like it will happen to all of us. Like, yeah. But yeah, not enough at the moment.
Somebody has asked here, does it matter if a person has an accent? So do you have any, maybe if this is on Laura, just to think about a context of that question, if somebody has a regional accent, does that make a massive difference? And do you have any tips to how somebody can help themselves out in that sense?
I think, it depends on how open the production are to a varied cast of accents, and it really depends on the context of the show. I mean, I guess an accent would have to make sense in the story. I mean, I guess you can suspend your belief more for different types of projects, but I guess there does have to be some kind of explanation as to why somebody has an accent. Otherwise, it's distracting. So I wouldn't say that an accent would hold you back, but I guess it has to make sense in the context of the show, really. But yeah, I think in terms of the accents that we do tend to cast, I mean, if you can nail an RP accent, that will lend itself very well to a broad range of casting in general. But having said that, your accent is what makes you stand out, and it's actually, if you can then train yourself to do a kind of a lesser accent or a more neutral accent, then you're laughing, because you've got your special skill and you've got your you can do the RP as well. But also an American accent is very advantageous if you can nail an American accent as well. But if you can go from one to the other, or if you do have a regional accent, please don't think it will hold you back. It's just that perhaps you wouldn't be right for absolutely everything if your accent didn't make sense in the grand scheme of the jigsaw of it all. Yeah.
And also, nobody is ever going to be right for absolutely everything anyway. Somebody has just mentioned here, and Tracy has just said she trains in accents daily, and that there's so many apps. And I can't remember what it's called off the top of my head, but I was doing something where we needed Stoke-on-Trent accent, and it's really specific. And the producer mentioned an app. So there are things that you can do to help diversify your accent a little bit and just train yourself to be a bit malleable. Like I'll always check if somebody has the the accent listed that I'm after, if I know that their native accent isn't what I'm after, and I will trust that that is something that they're able to do, and then I'll always see them for the role if there is a specific accent attached to it. We've only got a few more minutes left, so Henry, is there any other questions?
I think we have some actors who aren't represented by an agent. Do you post castings on Backstage, Spotlight, similar platforms, or what's the way for unrepresented artists to be able to find out about a role?
Yeah, how do you look for outside of traditional methods? And I know that you both do this for new talent. So if somebody wasn't represented and they weren't on different casting platforms, or if they, how do you post out when you're going wider than people who are represented by agents?
Social media,
Spotlight, Backstage, yeah. Yeah, I think it's a good shout for you to follow a lot of casting directors. Even like the really big ones will post on Twitter with sort of shout outs of different things they're looking for. Yeah, so I think that's a good place to start. If you don't have one, you can sign up to Spotlight without having an agent, and people can search for you. So you can do that if you have the money to. But yeah, I think just putting your ear to the ground.
Social media is definitely a good one. Like I've said this before on one of these talks, but if I need like a little 20 minutes where I just need to see what's going on, I'll go on Twitter, because I follow all of casting directors and actors and different organizations that I like, and I'll just get an instant burst of like info of what's going on in the world at the time. And loads of casting directors do post their jobs, and especially when they're looking for specific things outside of the norms of what you might usually find, perhaps. Social media is a great tool. I just wanted to ask one more question of you both, because I love a good example. Do you have a standout memory of when you saw the right person for a job that you've been involved in the casting of, or that you've cast yourself? Do you have anything that's really stood out for you that when you were in the casting process you were like, oh my God, and what was it, if you can tell us? Sophie, if you want to go first.
I can think of one off the top of my head. I mean, there must have been more than this, but it was really early. It was my first casting job. It was with Chichester, and this guy came in, and the role had been through a lot of different auditions, and he came in, and it's one of those slow burn scenes where like it starts off as a kind of casual conversation and then it descends into a really emotional kind of breakdown almost. And this guy came in, and I don't think he'd done much, but by the end of the room, we were all just absolutely silent, to the point where I, who was reading with him, forgot to read the next line to give it, because I was just staring at him with tears in my eyes. And it was so beautiful, and he got the job, thank goodness. But yeah, I'll remember that forever, because the atmosphere in the room was palpable. It was really special. It was one of the reasons that I love being able to audition in the room, so that you can feel that energy. It's amazing.
Wow, cool. And what about you, Jessica?
I'd say it was probably the one that comes to mind is D'Angelo Osei-Kasadu, who plays Emmanuel in Rocks. He was just, in his audition, he did meditation. We'd been meeting kids all weekend, and I was playing a stressed mum on a bus and I felt it with like different kids, and just testing them with that. And then he came through, and Anu and Lucy ran out of the room, because I was like, I'm going to take a break, and they came, and he's like, he just made us do mindfulness. And yeah, that was when we knew, like, especially in this day and age where like all of the kids we were coming into contact with were really into Fortnite and couldn't really improvise without doing the floss or something. He just knocked it out of the park. and made us calm as well, which was lovely.
He is just amazing. That's Rox. I'll mention it again. I feel like I've worked on Rox because I tell everybody about it. But yeah, that little boy is like, you just have to see it. It's incredible. Okay, well, thank you so much for joining us today. Everyone who's watching, I've seen all of your comments coming through, and although I can't read them all, it's really nice to see you all engaging with each other and a real good mix of filmmakers and actors. So thanks so much for staying with us. Sophie and Jessica, thank you so much for all your knowledge and advice and just being here. I really appreciate it. And Henry, thank you so much for being involved with Backstage.
Thanks for having me on.
So last minute shout outs. Henry, is there anything you want to remind people or shout out to?
I shall say, well, again, thank you, Sophie and Jessica, but do please go check out the AMPLIFY Film Festival. It is on till this Sunday with loads of feature films, dramas, documentaries and shorts, plus Q&As for you to enjoy. And we'll make sure the link is out there, but that's AMPLIFY Film Festival.
Cool. And obviously check out Backstage. We've got lots more exciting talks coming and loads of great content that's going through Backstage at the moment, from casting calls and editorial content. It's a very exciting time to be involved. I'm just going to shout out, because you're all sharing your social media handles. So if you want to follow Backstage, we're at Backstage on Twitter, and we are at Backstage Cast on Instagram. I am at Hannah Castin on Twitter. And what's yours, Henry?
It's at AMPLIFY Film. And that's on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter.
Oh, you've got them all. Nice one. What about you, Jessica?
I'm on Twitter, Jessica Straker, all one word. But yeah, that's where I am. I don't really like social media anymore.
And you, Sophie?
Oh, do you know what? I need to get on Twitter. I'm not on Twitter.
Are you
I mean,
not?
I don't. I'm on at SafeKS, but I don't check it. I need to. But after this conversation about how best to find people on social media, I think I'm going to start using it. So what's the code?
Okay, great. Well, maybe we'll put it in the bio when we've put out this recording of this. So people, if you're watching in the future, hi. And it'll be in the notes. Okay, cool. Thank you so much, everyone. Enjoy the rest of your evening, and I hope you're all doing well wherever you are in the world. Thank you so much for joining us. Cheers. Bye.
Bye.
Yeah.